soul to soul, soul to soul.
Hello and welcome to Soul Talk Show. This is Pooja, and today we have with us a wonderful spiritual personality, Brother David, who's been practicing Rajyoga meditation for the last 36 years. He has been a doctor also. Welcome, Brother David, to our show, Soul to Soul Talk Show.
Thanks, Pooja. It's really great to be here.
It's our pleasure also to have you here. Brother David, people do say that doctors are next to God. How do you feel about that?
Actually, it's interesting. You know, in India, everyone's name has a meaning. Actually, in English, David means the one who's beloved of God. For myself, I understand what people are saying with that, but personally, I like to feel that I can connect to people on this kind of very ordinary way. I don't like to see myself as higher than other people. I worked in the community in Bradford in England, and in that community it was very multicultural, so many of the families were from Asia, and so they looked different, they dressed different, they spoke differently, but I used to feel underneath everyone was the same, and so I used to like to connect with people like that.
This feeling you had since childhood?
I did have those kind of feelings. Yeah, I had those kind of feelings since I was a child, but of course when you're a child you can't express it, but I used to feel, yes, that inside everyone's kind of the same and they should be treated the same.
Brother, was becoming a doctor your dream?
No, it wasn't actually. It was almost by chance. When I was a small boy, me and my friend used to have a chemistry laboratory in my shed, and we used to make fireworks. Actually, probably nowadays we'd have to be careful. We'd have probably been caught being a terrorist. And so I loved chemistry and I loved science. I actually wanted to be a chemical engineer. But when I was at school, we had so many maths teachers that it was very difficult for me to do a high-level maths. So I wasn't able to be a chemical engineer. So my school teacher said, you should be a doctor. I said, I don't want to be a doctor. It means a family doctor. I actually wanted to be a pharmacist. And then he said, well, you could be a dentist. That's quite a nice job. So I said, okay, I'll become a dentist. So that was my life choice. It wasn't a conscious thing.
Brother, how was your upbringing?
My upbringing was great. I had a set of very loving parents, and most of my childhood was playing out and sport. Because I'm from Liverpool. So in Liverpool, in England, sport is like your religion. So the whole of my childhood was sport.
You never thought becoming a sports person professionally?
Maybe, but I was kind of an all-rounder. I was reasonably good at cricket and tennis and football, and I used to play golf and table tennis, and but I never really, I used to like so many sports that I never really focused on one particular, so I never really had the thought of becoming professional. I'm not sure that I would be kind of good enough for that, but I enjoyed sport. I enjoyed sport a lot.
Brother, were you very studious since your childhood?
I think I enjoyed playing out more, but I could apply myself to studies. So I was reasonably good at passing exams, so I managed okay.
Last minute preparations?
Actually, no. Even when I was at school, I would actually get up quite early, and I would do a lot of study early morning, and then the day before the exam, I wouldn't do any study. I would just relax, go out. I wouldn't think about the exams, and I would try to come in fresh, actually.
So you had that consistency.
I had that consistency, and because when I was young, I used to get up quite early. I used to like going fishing, and I used to like the stillness of that. You know, I'd get up maybe 4 o'clock in the morning in summer, So I actually had the habit. I had the habit of getting up early.
Was that in your
No,
family?
it wasn't, because in England it's not like in India. I noticed like everything starts a couple of hours earlier over here, but in England there isn't so much that practice. But I was kind of a morning person. I had some I had some friends, and they said you should stay in bed till lunchtime. It's really great. So one day I thought, okay, I'll stay in bed, and then 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And I thought, oh, this is just so boring staying in bed. So I could never manage to stay in bed because I was kind of active. I used to like to do things. And I used to, even as a child, I used to think just laying in bed sleeping, it's kind of a waste of time.
What kind of company you had? What kind of friend circle you had?
Well, that's interesting because where I come from in Liverpool, I came from the area of the city which it was a little bit like the Sangam. We're in that part of the city where one side was quite a good area, so I had a set of friends that were generally from good families, and I also had a set of friends who I guess would be considered a little bit naughty, getting up to mischief. But what I found was that somehow I felt since an early age I was kind of protected from bad company. Even though I was in contact with some young people who were being quite naughty actually, and stealing and doing various things, but I was never drawn into that. It didn't feel right for me. And as I grew older, also at a dental college, it's quite stressful. So I know a lot of my friends and colleagues, they were drinking a lot and smoking and this and that. And for some reason, I never got into that. When I was a kid, my friends said, you need to learn to smoke. So, they took me behind the school baths as young children. And I tried to smoke a couple of cigarettes, but I couldn't inhale the smoke. So they told me, oh, there's no point smoking if you can't inhale. So, so even as a young child, I tried to smoke, but I couldn't.
So you had values since your childhood?
It wasn't a conscious thing. I felt as if I was protected by God, to be honest. But there was values there because I used to like kindness, and I worked with young children because I was a children's dentist. And what I noticed with young children is they have an innate sense of kindness. They look after each other. They're very caring. You don't have to tell them. I used to go into, I don't know what you call them, in like a kindergarten. So they're 3 and 4-year-olds. And someone falls down and the other children will automatically go and help them.
It's quite natural.
It's quite natural. And I think I had that in me. And the other thing is, I remember once when I was taken to a football match. I was quite young by my friend. And I can remember this very clearly, that one minute this football player did something really great and the crowd loved it. And they said, great, well done, fantastic player. And then about 10 or 15 minutes later, he made a mistake. And then the crowd were baying for his blood. They said, get him off, he's lousy, what a lousy player. And I think I was only about 7 or 8 years old at that time. But I remember thinking, like a child's mind, I remember thinking, how can someone be good one minute and not good the next minute? And I remember thinking inside that doesn't make sense. And so I guess there was something there in me that realized that actually there is goodness in everyone, and it can't just disappear because they make a mistake on a superficial level.
Were you an overprotective kind of child?
Not like they are in India. I had very good parents, and so they looked after me very well. But I wouldn't say that I was overprotected, so I was allowed to go out and play and do things. They protected me in a sensible way. So, like when I was about 15 or 16, I wanted a scooter and a motorbike. And my father said, no, that's not safe. You wait 1 year and then maybe we get a small car. So in that way they were protecting, but I wouldn't say that I was overprotective.
Encouraging type of.
They encouraged, yeah, they encouraged.
Brother, did you take your decisions on your own, or were they given by your parents?
Well, when you're a child, of course, naturally, you have to follow your parents' guidance. And of course, parents have more life experience. But I remember as a child being fiercely independent. And so I can remember my first day at school. I think I was probably 4.5. And my mum was insisting to take me to school. And it was probably quite sensible because we had to cross a main road. But I can remember telling her, why do you need to come with me? I'm perfectly capable of going to school on my own. You don't need to come with me. And so there was something in me that was kind of, I could see there was an independence there. And also, whilst I was very, like with the family traditions and family systems, naturally as a child, you uphold those because that's honouring your parents. But I could see that I wasn't just someone who wanted to follow social customs, like superstitions, for instance. I can remember when I was a small child, when I found out that it was unlucky to walk under a ladder. So the first thing I did when I saw the next ladder was that I would walk under it. So I was a little bit like that. And I can remember also at school, I would kind of defend other boys if I felt there was some injustice from the teachers or the older boys. It would usually be me that would speak out. So I think there was something in me that
You had good confidence.
I don't know whether I would call it confidence. I think I did have the courage to speak out about what I felt was to be right, what I felt to be right.
Did you frequently visit church?
Actually, I'm from a Jewish family. So as a young child, I used to have to go to the synagogue, but I must admit, because I was a sports person, I used to like to play football and cricket and various sports on a Saturday morning. So when I was young, I couldn't really understand why God wanted me to be unhappy by having to go to the synagogue instead of going to play football. And actually my father was, he was very broad-minded. He had a hairdressing shop, and Saturday was his busiest day, you know, and in the Jewish religion, like Saturday is like Sunday is to the Christians, and maybe Friday in Islamic religion. So Saturday is considered like the holy day. But for him to earn an income, he would have to work on a Saturday. So he actually used to tell me, okay, I can't go to the synagogue on a Saturday, but it's what's in your heart that's most important. So that was a nice thing that I learned from my father, actually.
Brother, what kind of image you had about God in your childhood?
You know, when I was younger, I had quite a few, what I now understand to be quite spiritual experiences, but I couldn't verbalize those to anyone, and there was no one that I could really speak to. And I must admit, in a sort of a Judeo-Christian tradition, the concept of God is very, they talk about fearing God, and there's a jealous God, and that, as a young person, I couldn't relate to that, actually. I couldn't really understand if God was a loving parent, how he was to be feared, how he was a jealous God. And then, you know, if you look in the course of history, even now, so many wars and fightings have been in the name of religion. So there was something in me that actually couldn't relate to that idea. And when I was younger, I remember one of the people from the Jewish religion, like one of the rabbis, and he was talking about other races as if they were a little bit lower. And I remember thinking as a child that I thought, this doesn't seem to be right. This doesn't seem to be right. And if this is what religion is to do with, and religion is to do with God, that I don't really want anything to do with it. I realized afterwards, when I became involved with the Brahma Kumaris, and certainly in England there's a very strong interfaith movement. So through the Brahma Kumaris, I then listened to other people from different religions, including other Jewish people, and I realized that what this particular person was saying wasn't anything to do with the religion, but it was just his own prejudices. But as a young child, I couldn't really work.
Different belief systems, we can say that.
Yeah, but actually, like in a lot of religions, you know, the religion gets mixed up with culture and politics and language and geography, and so it's quite actually it's quite difficult to sift out what's really authentic. But it's interesting, and in fact I never really used to like going to the synagogue because I used to prefer to be playing football or going fishing. But there was one prayer from the Jewish religion which somehow I remember to this day, and it goes something like, "Thou shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your might, and you shouldn't have any graven images before God." Now, as a child, I didn't really understand what that meant, but it was quite significant for me. And now, you know, years later, coming to meditation, the Brahma Kumaris, the rajyoga meditation, which is a very spiritual meditation, then I realized that actually, ultimately, everything that I need in life ultimately has to come from God, but it might be through other people. So it took me many years to realize why that was. I like that.
Brother, you said you had certain spiritual experiences in the childhood. Could you please tell some?
Yeah, you know, it's quite interesting. A lot of children have invisible friends. And so when I was young, I used to have an invisible friend, and I used to think of this invisible friend as like a little star that was kind of with me, not physically, but and I used to kind of...
Imagination kind?
It was imagination, and children have imagination, but somehow it felt kind of real. And I used to talk to this little star kind of when I was young. When I was asleep as a child, I used to sometimes wake up and I used to feel as if I was like I'd been flying. And when I come back to the body with a bump, and as a child, I used to enjoy that. I used to love the story of Peter Pan. I don't know, do they have the story of Peter Pan in India? It's a lovely story. It's of a child who doesn't want to grow up. And I used to love that, but he could fly. And so there was this idea of kind of being free, and I thought it was kind of natural that you just kind of, at night you go to sleep and you'd go flying off and come back with a bump. And I used to think it was fun, and then of course as you grow up you realize maybe not everyone has that experience. And the other experience for me after coming to Brahma Kumaris, I realized was quite a profound experience. I used to have quite a lot of experiences of light, and I can remember as a young child putting my head in the pillow, and I would see like golden light, and well, the only thing I can describe was like stars. You know, when you look at an aircraft and the side of the aircraft, and it's got all the lights on the windows, there was like rows and rows of lights, and it used to make me feel so peaceful, and I didn't know why, but I used to like doing that. I used to put my head in the pillow, and when I could see this light, it used to make me feel so nice.
But you couldn't understand that?
No, I didn't understand what it was, but it was just I don't know. And then many years later, after quite a long spiritual searching and reading, coming to the Brahma Kumaris, and then being explained within the concept of the Brahma Kumaris that an original home of the soul, which, surprise, surprise, was a region of light, and the soul represented by like an image of light, and that world being a very peaceful world. And then I thought, wow, that's interesting. So it's kind of interesting that these deep memories are actually in the soul, and sometimes they surface.
Brother, were you an atheist? Can we call it like that?
I went through a period in my life, as I was explaining, when because I was connecting God with religion, and my observation that quite a lot of religion, what people said and what they did, there was a difference in their life. So people would be saying one thing and doing something else, and that I didn't feel comfortable with that. And because of my experiences of being told that God is fearful, God is a jealous God, and that I actually decided that I was going to be an atheist, because I thought, I was told that God creates happiness, but he also creates sorrow. Or if he didn't create sorrow, he allowed sorrow to happen. And for some reason that didn't sit comfortably with me. It didn't feel right. And I decided I was going to be an atheist. And then when I went to university, and like you do when you're young people, you have conversations with your friends, and my friends kind of upgraded me to agnostic, because they said, well, it's not that you don't believe, you're willing to believe, but as yet you haven't heard anything that is meaningful for you. So I decided to be agnostic.
Brother, were you from inside happy over all those years? What you felt about that?
Yeah, generally speaking, I think I was a reasonably happy kid. But I can remember having moments of being a bit mopey and when I was a child. But generally speaking, I was quite a happy child. Yeah.
Were you happy with the relationships you had?
If you came round to my house, there'd always be 5, 10, 15 young lads, and we were doing sport, and we'd do this, that, and the other, and my whole life has been like that. Even when I was young, I had lots of friends who happened to be girls, not girlfriends, but they just happened to be girls. I think I had a kind of a nature of just being able to mix, and I like that. I used to like that.
So you were the only child?
No, I have an older sister. She's 3 years older than me. Yeah.
Brother, in your difficult times, whom did you look for?
When I was younger, because I can't really remember having anyone that I could speak to in that way. In fact, when I went to university, I was actually the youngest in the year in the dental college, and if I'd been a couple of days younger, I'd have been down a year. And I noticed that a lot of the people I was training with, they'd had a lot more life experiences than me, and I guess nowadays it would be called emotional intelligence. I didn't really have so much of that. I had a pretty innocent childhood. So it was only, I think I started to see my first signs of stress and difficulty when I started doing my higher exams, probably when I was 15, 16, 17. And then when I went to dental college, that's when I really started to have difficulties.
Because that was not your choice.
Not so that it wasn't my choice. I mean, it felt as if it seemed by accident. Looking back now, I realized I did have a capacity to care, and so I really enjoyed my work. It was more the fact that, I think out of a 4.5, 5 years at dental college, in that time, never once did one of my teachers or mentors ask me how I was feeling. And so they seemed to be more concerned about, passing the exams, which I could do. I was a good student. I was reasonably adept with my hands, so I could, do the work. But but because my whole life literally was sport, 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 I don't think I had many social skills, what we call social skills now. And I certainly didn't have any mental skills to actually deal with my own stress. And I guess, you know, I can ask you, Pooja, do you like going to the dentist? Is that your favorite? You know, most people don't like going to the dentist. Some do, but most don't, because there's a little bit of fear. And I realized that I didn't have the skills to deal with my own fear, so it was actually quite challenging.
Did you ever think of God then? Looking for God in those times?
I'm not sure that I called it God, but I was looking for some peace of mind. And I think probably, yes, I was looking for God. I mean, because I'm from Liverpool and very close to the where I studied, the dental college is one of the cathedrals, a very beautiful cathedral. And I can remember going to sit there. Not that I was Christian, but it was a quiet space. And so for some reason, that quietness seemed to be quite important to me.
Kind of self-analysis you used to do?
I wouldn't say, it was more I just needed to be peaceful because it was just so challenging. And I can still remember my first live patient, because you know, probably as dental students, and I hope I'm not going to scare some of your viewers, because generally speaking, when you're a student at a dental college, you're taught very well and there's very good supervision. It's just that you're slow, obviously, not like an experienced dentist. But I can remember meeting my first live dental patient, and up until that, you practice things on models, plastic models, so you've never actually done it on a real patient. And so I can remember going out onto the corridor and meeting my first real live patient. And it was a young girl, maybe 17 or 18, very smartly dressed. And I looked at her and she looked at me, and she kind of leaned over and said, "You have done this before, haven't you?" I remember thinking, I said, "Yes, on the models." And actually, I can still remember that feeling today. You know, if I could have just run down the corridor and run out into the street and just got out of there, I would have done. And I now know that was actually, in stress terms, that's called a panic attack. You know, where and obviously it wasn't appropriate for me to do that, but that was my first very strong experience of stress. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't have any tools how to deal with that. And it was okay, I managed, and it was fine. But then I realized that not only dealing with other people's, my own stress, but dealing with other people's stress, I didn't have any tools because we weren't taught that. And that's when I seriously started getting interested in relaxation and things that would enable me to relax, just to function. Because stress makes you dysfunctional. Stress reduces your efficiency to do things.
So thank you so much, Brother David. For now, we have to stop right here because we are short of time. We'll be meeting in the next episode and we'll be continuing with the same journey. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you again, Brother David.
Thanks, Pooja. It's been my honor.